The mop bucket sloshed with each push. Cold water soaked through Darius's worn sneakers, but he didn't flinch. He just kept swiping the industrial mop across the smooth tile floor, gliding past a dozen pairs of black boots and holstered sidearms. Most of the officers barely acknowledged him. A few offered a nod. One called him "kid," another just grunted. Darius didn't mind. He was used to being invisible. Until Officer Bradley noticed him. Bradley was built like a linebacker and talked like a drill sergeant with a hangover. He swaggered through the precinct like he owned the place, always laughing too loud or sneering at whoever didn't match his worldview. That morning, Darius had just stepped into the hallway outside the briefing room when Bradley nearly slammed into him. "Watch it, mop boy," Bradley barked, brushing past and making the mop handle wobble. "Sorry, sir," Darius murmured, steadying it. Bradley turned, squinting at him. "You're new?" Darius hesitated. "Started last week." "Figures. You missed a spot. Floor looks like crap." Darius looked down. The floor gleamed. "Yes, sir." "At least you know how to take orders. That's all you need for a job like this, huh? Mop and shut up." Darius felt the sting of the words, but he kept his face still. He'd heard worse, much worse. He bowed his head and stepped aside. Bradley gave a low laugh and disappeared into the briefing room. The other officers didn't say anything. No one corrected Bradley. But Darius noticed one glance. Officer Ramirez gave him a long, assessing look. Not mocking, not pitiful, just watchful. He logged it quietly in his mind. That night, Darius stayed late. It wasn't because the floors needed another pass. It was because he liked walking the halls after most of the officers left. He'd done the same when he worked after school as a part-time janitor at City Hall and later at the courthouse. He liked learning how the building breathed at night. The murmur of radios, the buzz of vending machines, the whispered gossip in forgotten locker rooms. He was mopping near the records department when he heard Bradley's voice again. "I don't care what the mayor says. These new diversity hires are soft, no grit, always whining about fairness. Back in the day, we didn't have to walk on eggshells." There was a pause. "Yeah, I know, he's new, but you should see the janitor we've got now. Little punk. Thinks he's clever. I'd bet money he's one of those affirmative action kids who flunked out of community college and ended up scrubbing floors." Darius stood still, listening. His jaw clenched. He didn't move until Bradley stomped past him again without a word. The officer didn't even notice the tension in Darius's posture, didn't see the way Darius's knuckles had whitened around the mop handle. The next morning, Darius came in early and found Ramirez at the coffee machine. "Morning," Darius said. Ramirez gave him a nod. "You okay?" Darius tilted his head. "Why wouldn't I be?" Ramirez studied him. "You kept your cool yesterday. That's rare." "I'm used to keeping cool." "So I've heard." Darius almost smiled back and walked on. That afternoon, Bradley caught him again, this time in front of the main desk. "Hey, mop boy, what's with the attitude?" "I don't think I had one." "Ah, you think. You don't get to think. You're here to mop, not to play smart." "I didn't say anything." "That's exactly the problem. You think you're slick, but I know your type." "My type?" "Yeah, you think you're better than this job, don't you? You think just 'cause you talk proper and walk straight, you deserve more than cleaning up after us?" The precinct had gone quiet. Several officers had turned to watch. Darius lowered the mop. "I think everyone deserves to be treated with respect. Bradley stepped in, close enough for his badge to glint. "Well, here's a lesson in respect. Janitors don't lecture cops." Ramirez stood up from a desk across the room. "Bradley, mind your business."
Ramirez didn't back down. "You're making it everyone's business." Bradley scoffed, then turned back to Darius. "You got a problem with me, boy?" Darius stared at him calmly. Then, without raising his voice, he said, "You should really stop talking." Bradley laughed. "You threatening me, mop boy?" "No," Darius said, still calm. "Just trying to save you from yourself." The room had fallen silent. Even the phones seemed to pause. That's when the door opened. Chief Lena Foster walked in. Every officer stood straighter, even Bradley. The chief was in full uniform, her silver hair pulled back in a sharp bun, her dark skin gleaming in the morning light. Her eyes scanned the room, landing squarely on Darius. "You ready?" she asked. Bradley blinked. "Wait, what?" Chief Foster ignored him. "We have a meeting in 15. Let's go." Darius nodded, set the mop aside, and walked to her. Bradley looked back and forth between them. "Chief, why are you—" Chief Foster didn't look at him. "Because that's my son." Dead silence. The color drained from Bradley's face. Chief Foster's voice was ice. "And this department's new internal compliance evaluator." Gasps. Ramirez didn't even try to hide his smirk. Bradley stammered. "But he was mopping floors." "Yes," Foster said, "because he asked to. Said he wanted to see what it was really like, to observe, unnoticed." Bradley opened his mouth. Foster cut him off. "And thanks to you, he's seen exactly what I needed him to." She turned and walked out. Darius followed. Bradley didn't move. But Ramirez clapped softly once, then turned back to his desk. Darius walked beside his mother in silence until they reached the administrative wing. The hallway felt different now, not because the floors were cleaner or the light brighter, but because he no longer wore the shield of anonymity. Her mother said nothing until they reached her office. Once the door closed, she turned to him. "You okay?" she asked, voice softer now. "Yeah," he nodded. "I warned you someone would push. I needed to see it." Chief Foster's eyes, so fierce in front of her officers, dimmed just slightly. "You saw enough?" "No. I saw exactly what I expected." She sat at her desk, resting her forearms on the polished surface. And there's a culture problem in this precinct, not just Bradley. He's the loudest, but others knew. They heard. They watched. No one stepped in except Ramirez. Even the front desk sergeant looked away. Her mother leaned back. "You've got 2 weeks, full report. Every infraction you saw, every policy violation, every officer who failed to act." Darius nodded. "Already started the documentation." She gave him a long look. "You really want to be a cop?" "I want to fix the ones who think they're above the law." The next day, Darius didn't carry a mop. He wore a pressed button-down, slacks, and a badge clipped to his hip. Not a police badge, but an internal affairs ID with the seal of the mayor's office and a signature from the Department of Oversight and Ethics. He entered through the front doors and walked past every desk, silent but unmissable. Conversations died when he passed. Bradley was nowhere to be seen. He walked into the conference room and placed a thick manila envelope on the table in front of Captain Willis. The man looked startled. He picked it up, opened it, and scanned the first page. His eyes narrowed. "This from your mother?"
"No," Darius said. "From me. You'll find 10 separate incidents involving Bradley over the last 3 months. 5 verified by security footage, 2 involving racial profiling, 3 involving harassment of civilian staff." Willis closed the folder. "I'll need to verify. You'll find an external drive inside with time-stamped clips pulled directly from precinct security, and witness reports from officers. Anonymous, but several match the same dates and locations." Willis looked up at him, suddenly uncomfortable. "You're her son?" "Yes. And also, the person your department's union rep should have taken more seriously 2 days ago. But don't worry, this doesn't stop with Bradley. He stepped back, ready to leave, but paused. One more thing. Check the vending machine hallway camera at 9:42 p.m. 2 nights ago. You'll hear a conversation Bradley had on the phone. Might want to share that with legal. By the end of the day, Bradley had been placed on leave. Within 72 hours, the Internal Affairs Division had expanded their investigation. Ramirez quietly received a commendation, and Darius, once invisible, now walked the halls with a quiet kind of authority that made people uncomfortable. Exactly as it should be. But the real turning point came a week later, during the monthly Community Review Board meeting. Darius sat beside his mother at the long oak table in the municipal hall. Officers, civic leaders, clergy, activists, and reporters lined the room. The mayor herself presided. On the agenda, a public update on precinct oversight. The mayor turned to Chief Foster. "I understand there's been a personnel review." "Yes, ma'am. I'd like my son to deliver the report." The room murmured. Darius stood and walked to the podium, setting down a binder. "My name is Darius Foster. I hold a dual degree in criminal justice and behavioral psychology. For the last month, I've been embedded at Precinct 84, first in an observational capacity, then as a compliance officer. What I found was disappointing, but not surprising. Racism doesn't always wear a hood. Sometimes it wears a badge, carries a coffee, and jokes about snowflakes." He let the silence linger. "In the span of 4 weeks, I witnessed verbal harassment, discriminatory enforcement bias, and an institutional silence that allows bad officers to thrive while good officers get buried in paperwork and shame." One man in the back stood. "How do we know you're not biased? You're the chief's son." Darius smiled faintly. "Good question. I was undercover for most of my assignment. No one knew who I was. They treated me like the lowest man in the building. And you know what? That's how people show you who they are." He flipped a page. "The officer who called me a janitor didn't just insult my job. He revealed his worldview, one that sees hierarchy, not humanity, obedience, not justice." Reporters scribbled furiously. The mayor cleared her throat. "What's your recommendation?" Darius's tone was crisp. "Mandatory training won't fix this. Restructuring will. Bradley should be terminated, not suspended. Any officer who witnessed his behavior and did nothing should undergo performance review. And this department needs a new community liaison program, starting with unarmed civilian oversight." Someone clapped in the back. Then others joined in. The applause built into a storm. That night, Bradley's official termination was announced. His union tried to fight it, but the footage and reports were too damning. His prior complaints, once buried, had come back into the light. Darius made sure of it. The next week, a local news station asked to interview Darius. He declined. Instead, he gave them permission to use the footage, but insisted on one condition. Show the full clip of the moment Bradley said, "You don't get to think, you're just a janitor." And show the ending, when Darius walked out beside his mother not as a cleaner, but as the man who cleaned house. Because sometimes revenge doesn't come with shouting or fists. Sometimes it walks in quietly, listens patiently, and takes notes. And when it strikes, justice doesn't just knock. It rewrites the rules of who's allowed to stand.